Hey Seekers, it's Hayden again here coming at you with another video. In this video I'll be talking about grounding and processing intense experiences so that you can move through your life in a safe way, get the lessons you need to learn from those experiences, and create more fluidity in your experiences that you may be having. So I want to go ahead and start talking about intense experience. What do I mean by intense experience? Well, I'm focusing on experiences that result in a sense of ungroundedness. I know that some of you may be familiar with the concept of grounding, but I'm going to go ahead and define what grounding versus ungrounding is, so you can understand what it actually means to ground. So ungrounded, you may feel like you have high energy. You might feel like you are sort of stuck in your thoughts. You might feel like you're making decisions that you wouldn't normally make, or you just kind of feel disconnected from the world, like the physical world. It can show up as a variety of different things, and every person's version of being ungrounded is different because we're all different. And so it's knowing when you feel ungrounded. It's when you feel like you're not you, not like in a depressed kind of way, but more of like a spacey kind of airy feeling, where you don't really feel like you have your feet on the ground and you're kind of being pushed around in some way. So I'll go ahead and speak about groundedness. So groundedness is the opposite of all that stuff. It's feeling very secure, very rooted into the earth, very in your body. And that is basically like a container or a space when you're grounded to be able to work with different energies, work with different things that might show up in yourself. And so when you really anchor experiences, when you anchor yourself, you're able to work on those things. You might feel them more. So if you're processing something, you might be more close to that process, but that's important in integrating that experience. And so grounding is very important in integration, especially if you've experienced something that's made you feel ungrounded. A lot of times that's something that was maybe a little bit overwhelming for you, or it was a lot to handle. And so that's part of the process is grounding. So that's really important to come back into your body and to feel like you are here and not sort of drifting elsewhere. And there's a few different ways that can be helpful when it comes to grounding, and I'm going to go over those right now. So the number one way that I've found to help with grounding is creating a support system around you that you are comfortable with. So finding people in your life that you trust with whatever you're going through, that you can let them know, like, hey, this is what I'm dealing with, this is what I'm trying to integrate, or I just don't feel right. And honestly, if you have people that really have your back, they'll be able to notice immediately when you feel when you're ungrounded, or when you just went through something intense that you need to process and integrate. And having them be able to hold that space for you and help you ground, because sometimes we're not big enough to be able to create that space for ourselves because we just dealt with something that was much larger than ourselves. And so that's where things like counseling, things like group support, friends, like close friends and family and things like that are very important when dealing with intense experiences, because they're basically creating that container for you to allow you to integrate those experiences and ground. So you're not basically stuck in a state where you're kind of floating around. It gives you that security, and they're actually assisting you with that grounding. So that's one of the most important things. That being said, it is important to try to ground yourself as well. And there's a few ways you can do this. Some very simple ways are exercise, so things that have to do with the body. Getting your body moving, that can bring you more into your body, can be really helpful. I know some people use meditation as a way to ground themselves, but the thing with meditation is there's so many different ways to out there to meditate, and it depends on what you're doing in your meditation, because some people, when they meditate, they're actually leaving, they're actually ungrounding themselves, they're they're disconnecting. And that's not what you want to do. You want to do a meditation that's body focused. So you're either, you're focusing on different parts of your body or just feeling your body. There's a meditation that I do sometimes. I actually did it last night because I was feeling ungrounded. We had a group meeting and there was a lot of different stuff going on, and I had to do Reiki on a couple people that were going through basically altered states, and so basically holding the space for them, and that resulted in me being a little bit ungrounded as well afterwards. And so when I was going to bed, I felt really high energy, and so what I did is I imagined roots going down into the earth through my feet, really down far into the earth, and I noticed that I had a hard time at first getting them through my feet. So I had to keep on working at it and trying to get it through. Once I got it through my feet, down into the earth. Once I did that, I actually became more grounded, and I was a little bit more tired at that point, and I ended up falling asleep while I was visualizing that meditation or that visualization. So that can be really helpful to do as well. Another aspect that can be really helpful to do, and it's kind of related to the first one of creating a support community or support group around you, is talking about it. So not trying to get away from it, but actually address it straight up. Be like, hey, this is how I feel, this is what's going on. Not letting it kind of stay just within you. So sharing that with other people that you feel comfortable with. And they don't necessarily have to be somebody that you want in your support group, but by somebody listening to you, they're actually holding space for you, and they are grounding you by listening to that, especially if they're a grounded person. If you're talking to somebody who isn't grounded, that may not be helpful because they're holding a space for you that's also ungrounded. So you want to be talking to people that have that space. And some people really don't have that big of a problem with ungroundedness and grounding. They're just very grounded people. Some of those people are people that work a lot with their hands, that are very like physically oriented, like mechanics or farmers and things like that. They're very used to just being very physically oriented in this world kind of operation. So if you think of somebody who is just naturally very grounded, it might be helpful to talk to them because they're going to be able to hold that space for you better than somebody who struggles with being grounded or ungrounded, unless they have a good understanding of how those different things work and they can hold that grounded space for you. That can be very helpful because then they can actually see the transition from the ungrounded state in that person to a more grounded state. And people who are trained in this can actually see when somebody sort of comes back to earth versus when somebody's just kind of floating in a different state of being. So if you know somebody like that, that might be even better. So when it comes to processing, once you actually ground, once you actually get that foundation or that space around you, that's going to give you the space to be able to process and integrate whatever you've been dealing with. And that's going to take time depending on how much you need to integrate or how intense the experience was that you had or whatever you're trying to integrate. So it's going to take time. Sometimes if it's something not very big, you might just need to talk about it once and then that's fine. Versus something that's more intense, it might take a year or two or maybe a few months. And that's where something like counseling or something like a group support or like some kind of team around you would be helpful to really get you through whatever you're going through. And everybody, like I said, needs some kind of team. But you have to feel what's right for you and feel like you've got the support you need to be able to deal with whatever you're trying to deal with. So I'm not quite sure what I'm going to talk about in my next video, but I will be posting that sometime soon. And if you're interested in what I had to say today, then you should probably check out some of my other videos. My last video was about psychosis and spiritual awakening and different things about that. So if you're interested in that, check that out. If you like this video, go ahead and like and comment below. As always, seek your truth and take time for yourself.